paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted. Tonight, though, you notice I got my Mothman shirt on. I'm going back to West Virginia. You guys know how much I love West Virginia. I've gotten so much paranormal stuff out of there. But today's guest is Bill and Jaci Kousalas. Hope I pronounced that right. And they've written a book. It's called Bridging the Tragedy: Silver Linings in the Mysterious Ohio River Valley. And basically, December 15th, 1967, you guys, I'm sure most of you know about it, the Silver Bridge from Point Pleasant, West Virginia into Ohio fell down. Just came down, killed 46 people, injured a whole bunch. Very traumatic for the city. There were people out there looking in the frigid waters for survivors. Really bad time. Prior to that collapse, and here's where you all should remember, the city had been under siege. Multiple reports with UFOs, men in black, poltergeist activity, and of course the infamous Mothman, the Mothman sightings. Well, Dr. Kousalas and his wife were investigating, how do I say it? And I'll let them say it. They say it much better, but the positive things that came out of trauma, especially trauma around paranormal incidents and mass casualty incidents. So I'm going to let them talk because I'm just going to mess it up. Here's Bill and Jaci. I hope I pronounced your name right, folks.
You got it the second time.
The second time. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Well, you sent me a PDF of the book. It was incredible. I was able to keep up with a lot of it, but not all of it. But you have managed to find, as you say, a silver lining. Can you tell us your views of the Mothman sightings and the collapse of the Silver Bridge?
Well, Dan, thanks again for having us this evening.
Thank you.
We really appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the story. Really, we interviewed 11 people, most of whom were Silver Bridge disaster family members and friends of people who were on that bridge when it went down. So it's not the kind of thing where you would normally expect that good things would come from a terrible tragedy like that. But we were really amazed by the things that we were able to learn from talking to these people. We did have a number of folks who had witnessed UFOs, and we did have a couple of people also who had encounters with Mothman. So that was interesting too. But really, to a person, each one of them came up with at least a few things that were positive, even if they endured deaths in their family, like Linda Lane had, and Jimmy Wedge certainly, or Andy Colvin and Harriet Plumbrook, and the strange experiences that they had. They were all able to come up with some positive things as a result of going through those challenges.
Bill, is that a human nature to look for the bright side, or is this something different because of the situation?
Well, and I'm being interrupted here by, this is Ellie.
Yeah, they warned me there was dogs, but guys, I love dogs. So.
Ellie's really happy. I just got home from being gone all day, and she's excited to be here with me. But, I think it's counterintuitive because when tragedy happens, we don't normally look for the good things. I think you have to be a pretty resilient individual. I think you have to have support, and I think you have to want to grow and develop past incredible pain. And I think that that's what we found here in this West Virginia community or communities, because we had people both in the Point Pleasant Gallipolis area, as well as people from the Charleston area. They're people who, by nature, West Virginia is not an easy place to live. There's not really a lot of high paying jobs. There is certainly the coal industry where there's a lot of black lung that's happened with people over the years and just challenging places to work. But the resiliency and the hardiness of the people that we talk to, I think really helped them to develop beyond the trauma into the silver linings that they were able to share with us.
Okay. So what kind of stories do they give you that made you want to write the book on it?
Well, we really, I think, setting out into the project itself, which was about 2.5 years ago that we began the research. We'd become friends with people in the community of Point Pleasant since 2016. We'd been visiting there for many years. And what we determined was that, every time we went back to Point Pleasant, we made more friends. And these weren't just people that were just friendly. I mean, they really treated us like family, and like seeing us was the biggest highlight of their day. And I think they're like that with everybody. It's got nothing to do with Jaci and me. Well, probably her, but nothing to do with me. But I mean, they really they rolled out the red carpet, treated us really, really kindly, and they made us want to keep coming back. And so getting to know people like that, they just illustrated such a tremendous way of looking at life.
Okay.
It's really, really something that we both highly value.
I have noticed over the years, and maybe my own opinion, the poor Irish, the poor blacks in the South, have the best music, the most happy-based music, whether it's the blues or jazz or just Irish music in general. Do you think there's something inside of people like this that just cling on to something happy, even though it seems like the whole world's against them?
I think a lot of it speaks to the collectiveness of their social groups. I think you see in some of the Eastern Asiatic countries, Japan, China, different areas where family is so valued and the social group is more highly esteemed than the individual is. We see here in the Western societies, primarily, and I'm speaking to Western Europe and then America, we're kind of individualistic. But you see in some of these areas where you mentioned, the folks who maybe aren't from the deep socioeconomic background, things are more challenging financially. They come together, they focus on the group more than they focus on the individual or the ego self. They're more interested in that collectivist nature. And I think by focusing on that, they tap into the real values. And I hate to say this, but the real values that perhaps we all should, if that makes sense. I love the way that they exemplify the greater good rather than individual status, ego, etc.
And that includes the folks in the mountainous area of West Virginia and these kind of folks that you were talking with.
That's what they've shown us.
Maybe family's more important than the individual.
Yes.
So are they keeping a positive spirit for the kids to learn from? Is that, one of the things that they've been raised with?
I think that's part of it. I've been kind of rambling here for a few minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure my wife has some good things to say as well.
Yeah, we talked before you got here, Bill, and she's a delight, let me tell you. Jackie, you got something to throw in on that? You met the folks.
I don't remember what you just asked. I think you said something about the family.
Yeah, if the family is more important than the individual. And
I
keeping
think so.
a positive attitude, it may be their way of teaching the kids the same thing.
I think so. And I say that because Susan Sayer was one of the people that we interviewed. And her daughter, Brittany, is the one that talked her mom into interviewing with us for our book, our study. And Susan, I can't remember the title. It's in the second book because we have a picture of her and Brittany, but it's something like Miss Mega Purity International Universe or something. I mean, they have won so many crowns for Miss Purity pageants, and now they're lifetime ambassadors for that crown. And it's not like a normal beauty pageant. It's based on the purity of the life that you live, the values that you hold, and things like that. So Brittany's in all kinds of competitions for crowns, and she holds many crowns. But her mom is an ambassador. Her mom was lifetime. Brittany is the only one that's ever got the ultra mega Miss Purity, whatever it is, but she got that from her mom. So I do think that that's one, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen all over the world where the parents, pass on good things like that, but it seems like it's more prevalent in West Virginia, and I think part of that too is because they're in the Bible Belt and they're very religious, so family is very important. They're churchgoers. They do a lot of family things together. The town itself does. Somebody told us they have a parade for everything, and that's true. And that's because they're a community that shares together and prays together, and stuff like that. I mean, the Mothman Festival, it takes the entire community of Point Pleasant to pull that off, and they keep it clean. I mean, not just clean, unfilthy, but clean in the natures. There's not drinking there. People that misbehave are removed, silently. There's not fighting, that kind of stuff. They keep it pure. So,
well, I've only been there once. The name Sayer, though, is familiar to me somehow. Was there a family member lost on the bridge or something?
Carolyn Harris. Did you talk about Carolyn, honey? Carolyn Harris was the person that actually inspired us to do this. She passed away. We met her one time, and we visited her restaurant, the Mothman Diner. And every day that we were in Point Pleasant, and we just fell in love with this woman. And her maiden name was Sayer.
Okay.
So
I think in the museum they talked about her. She was one of the ones that had a lot of interviews about this.
16 or 17 television shows she was on. And she blushed when she told us that. And I don't know if you had been at the museum in the last 3 years, maybe.
Last year. About this time last year, I spoke at a ghost conference nearby.
So what you saw in the museum, I'm sure, is something they call Harris Hall now. And Jeff got a part of the actual diner, and it's there with the stools, and that's Carolyn's diner stuff.
Yes, I was in there. I know what you're talking about. And that was, so is that diner is gone then, and what's left of it is represented in the museum.
Yeah, it's an educational center now or something where the diner used to be. But yeah, I was so happy that Jeff was able to do that and get different parts of it to set up in there in honor and memory of Carolyn. She was huge. She was huge in Point Pleasant, and her and Jeff co-founded the Mothman Festival. So she was huge in all of that too.
Well, I hope they can keep it going then.
Yeah.
Just for her sake.
Yes.
And I'm sure they will. I know it's a huge deal. Friends of mine who's been there said it's just elbow to elbow during that time.
The year after, the first year that they were able to have the festival after COVID, they said there was 25,000 people in attendance. In this last year, I think they said it was like 12 to 15,000. And you wouldn't believe the line of the cars coming over the bridges from Ohio. It was unbelievable. When you saw it on Facebook, it's like, and this last year that we went, it didn't seem like there was anybody there compared to the year previous.
But there was.
Oh, yeah.
The trauma side of this, especially those who survived who's had lost family on the bridge. How did they cope with this? Was it strictly the way they were brought up, or their positive attitude, or what did you find?
There were a number of different ways that they dealt with it. Now, when in having gone to Point Pleasant for 5 years before we started our study, we'd met a number of people in the community and talked to some of them about whether they'd be interested in being part of our book. And the first one was Mark Griffith. We met Mark with Carolyn the first day that we were in Point Pleasant in 2016. And he was our first volunteer. But Mark recommended a gentleman by the name of Rick Handley, who was another interviewee who we had. And we began doing, basically reaching out to these people who we'd met and people who they knew who might be interested in coming to the study. But we needed more than that. We needed at least 8 to 12 volunteers. Mm-hmm. So we actually contacted the newspapers in the Ohio River Valley, and they placed an ad for us in the paper for free. They didn't charge us a thing for it. It was on the front page. We were blown away that they didn't even want to charge us for this.
Yeah.
But the first person who called me was a guy by the name of Jimmy Wedge. And I answered the phone, and he said, "Hi, my name is Jimmy, and I'd be interested in talking to y'all." He says, "I lost both my mom and dad in the bridge disaster." And I was I felt like I really needed to handle this guy with kid gloves because he lost both of his parents in the Silver Bridge disaster. Now, when we met with Jimmy, we were a little nervous because he was kind of a high profile guy. He's a politician and businessman in the state of West Virginia these days. And he was older. He was the oldest person we interviewed, but he was the biggest cut up of everybody who we interviewed. He was hilarious. The stories he told us were just lights out. He was amazing. He was so much fun, but he talked about community support. His friends had his back. I mean, they basically, when it looked really bad and he was concerned mom and dad were both gone, they pulled him aside and said, "Look, we know you don't drink hard liquor. You need to do something to settle down." They gave him a shot of whiskey. Not that I want to say that alcohol is the way to cope with things, but support is. I mean, his friends were there. They had his back.
All right.
His family involvement was fantastic. His level of spirituality was excellent. And he felt that at 25 years old, his parents had given him enough resources emotionally, intellectually, to be able to cope with the loss of both of them. And he's had a tremendous life. So he was just one example. But I think we found over and over again the support of the community, faith in God, spiritual development, personal development, all these things they presented, and different people had different aspects of the things that presented to us in ways that they coped and ultimately thrived and had a good life, even though they went through this tremendous tragedy.
And it was quite a tragedy when you consider the idea of the bridge collapsing, people falling into the water in their cars, unable to escape. It's got to be frightening. We just had that happen again, in Baltimore, I think?
We did.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine the horror. It's like submariners going down, and you fight and fight until the oxygen's gone, I guess.
Yep. And it was so cold. A lot of them died of hypothermia.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. Did they have they managed to get out of the water who passed on after that?
There were a handful of survivors. Mm-hmm. Not everybody died. I want to say that something on the order of 8 or 10 people who went down with the bridge ultimately didn't die as a result of the disaster.
Okay. And the family of the others had to, even those folks, they had to, I'm sure, have some kind of therapy after that, that close of a call to death.
There was no therapy is what we were told. They didn't come into the schools and ask you if you were okay. It was just go on with life now, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, go to school. I remember some of the interviews were extremely emotional. Susan Sayer said that she remembers the day that they came in and they took out the desk of the 5th grader that passed away on the bridge. There were 2 teachers on the bridge, and one of them was on her way to the hospital to deliver a baby. And Charlotte Westwood was talking about that, and Charlene Westwood, and she said that it was just really hard. It was hard. She said, I just was numb, but there were no counselors made available for any of it. It's not like it is today where they bring in the counselors right away. Yeah. There was none of that.
Well, I guess when we're looking back at 65, we're looking at boomers whose parents went through World War II and the Depression, and they never had counseling. So, they, like you said, people from the mountains, people who are coal miners and their families, pull yourself up and get back to work.
And I think too, they were all going through it together, because there are pictures. We have some of the pictures. Linda Lane provided us with a lot of really nice pictures. And one of them just shows people lining the riverbanks. And this went on for days. Her brother was waiting for his car and his wife to be pulled out of the river, because they didn't have cell phones, so they didn't know. And they didn't know if they were stuck on the other side of the river or what might have happened. So they just waited and waited for these people. And she said that she was sure, her brother was sure that he found something that would have been in his wife's purse, but he still stayed at that river until they brought her body up. So they had each other to hold on to through the whole thing, and to do the funerals with. They talked about going and seeing the bodies together. They talked about some of the funerals that were held at the same time as others, because there were so many funerals at Christmas time. So
Bill, what was the silver linings of all of this? Aside from the fact that family and God got them through it, was there something else that I'm missing here? Because it still sounds like a horrible tragedy.
There were a lot of things that were positive that came of the bridge disaster.
Okay.
I'm thinking one of them really has been, we haven't talked about this yet, but the Silver Bridge was the main conduit from both the north to the south, not just of the state of West Virginia and Ohio, but for the north and the south of the country.
Really?
And so if you needed to go to the east, you had to cross the Silver Bridge. If you needed to go to the west, you had to cross the Silver Bridge. When that bridge went down, the closest ways to get across the Ohio River were in Pomeroy, Ohio, which is about 12, 13 miles north, or you've got to go all the way down south to Huntington, which is about 40 miles to the south. So traffic really stalled.
Yeah.
They had to come up with ferry boats to get people across the river. Now, a lot of the economy of Point Pleasant in Gallipolis, Ohio, was dependent upon the traffic and the commuters, the 18-wheelers, the people who were commuting for business purposes. They'd stop in Point Pleasant. They'd get food. They'd get gas. And all the other stores that were around there were supported a lot by that travel. When the bridge went down, and it was gone for 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
The whole infrastructure began to collapse in Point Pleasant. Gallipolis did okay. They lost a lot of revenue, but they were able to do okay. But Point Pleasant really went down the hill. Now, after the bridge was finally erected, the Silver Memorial Bridge, it's about 2 miles to the south of Point Pleasant, and that main thoroughfare now goes around Point Pleasant. So all that traffic and business, it didn't come back.
Right.
It didn't start to come back until the 2002 release of the Mothman Prophecies movie, which has then really spurred interest internationally about popularity of Mothman as a legend.
Right.
So consequently, now the community over the course of the last 22 years has begun to grow. New businesses have come to town. Like Susan Sayer told us, young people are no longer moving out of town. They're opening up businesses because all this overflow of all this tourism it's financially viable for them. So it makes good sense. So entrepreneurialism was one of the things that we noticed that was a big step in the right direction. You know, we talked about spiritual development, we talked about community and about family, but going through tragedies like this also allow us to take different perspectives. Like, you know, maybe this was a horrible thing, but now look at what's going to come of my community as a result of this legend of Mothman and how it's so popular now. So you've got people who are thriving now financially, from a business standpoint. That's another thing that's been positive as well.
Can
I say one thing that sticks out? And
go right ahead. Yes.
Did he freeze up?
I'm still here.
We're all right. Go ahead, Jackie.
The one thing that sticks out with me that was said in an interview was Jimmy Wedge, the one in my mind who lost the most, both of his parents. He said that he was grateful that he was 25 years old when his parents died, because if he would have been younger, it might have been too hard for him to understand, to come back to, or right. I don't.
Okay, hers is freezing up a little bit, and so is Bill. Uh-oh. Okay. Well, folks, I think we're going to try this again in a few minutes. And until then, I want you all to watch this, and we'll talk more shortly.
This is Margie Kay, and I'd like to say thank you to all of our KUNX show hosts, staff, listeners, and viewers for making us number one on Paranormal Talk Radio.
The UNX Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Kathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the UNX Network website at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com.
All right, friends, we'll talk more at the end of the show, of course, about becoming a member of the UNX Network. It's free, and there's so much you get out of it. But I'm looking forward to getting back. I think we got Bill and Jaci back now. All right, friends, sorry about that. I don't know what that was about.
I think that was on our end. We're sorry about that.
Did you check for Mothman?
That's probably what it is. He's running interference.
Anyway, Jaci, what you were talking about was this man who lost his family and was grateful that he got the 25 years with them.
Yes. And he said that he was grateful that he wasn't a younger child or younger. Like if it happened to someone that was like at high school age or younger, they wouldn't be able to have the understanding of what was going on and maybe wouldn't be able to survive that. And he also talked about his experience gave him the ability to help younger people to kind of coach them through problems.
Well, that's great. And you said he became a politician and business owner, did you say?
He did. He basically told us, I don't want to say I'm successful, but I've been pretty successful. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm pretty close. And he just did it with a real sense of humor. And he was 79 then, so he'd be about 82 now. Still working, still loves what he does. Just a really fun guy.
Wow, that's amazing. And we also discussed earlier that aside from the bridge, you interviewed a few people who had actually had um, engagements with UFOs and Mothman at that time.
We did. So the main one, really, the two people who were in the Charleston area, Andy Colvin, who is a publisher and author and has done all kinds of research when it comes to Mothman.
Mm-hmm.
He and Harriet Plumbrook grew up in the area that used to be known as Mound, West Virginia. And Andy had a couple of different Mothman encounters, and he and his friend Tommy actually built a shrine to Mothman. And when Tommy walked into the area where the shrine was, he got a vision, and he said, "Andy, come here, you got to check this out." So they both walked back up close to where this area was, and they saw a vision of what they believed was New York City on fire. The Twin Tower collapsed 2001. So all these years before, back in 1967, they had this vision of what they believed was the Twin Towers falling. And when it actually did happen, Andy thought, holy cow, that's what we saw. So they had a prophetic vision of the future, which is a lot of what John Keel talked about in the Mothman Prophecies book, were all these prophecies that were taking place. So they felt that they were delivered prophecies from Mothman as well, too. But Andy and Harriet both are very intelligent people. They both have over 160 IQs. Harriet's very psychic, and Andy is psychic as well, too. And they've had really wonderful careers. So when we looked at dimensions of post-traumatic growth that emerged from their lives, really personal development was a big one. Harriet was always very intelligent in school, but she went off the charts after that and was able to develop a photographic memory. She could just read from any text and spit it back to you verbatim what she had just read. She's just an amazing individual. So the both of them, Harriet had not so much Mothman encounters. She talked about seeing UFOs or UAPs when she was experiencing the Mothman flap. Andy actually saw Mothman 2 or 3 different times.
I know there's a newspaper editor who actually had Men in Black visit him. At least he's talked about that. There was poltergeist activity. There was, of course, the UFOs and Mothman. There seemed to be a lot going on at that time. How many people did you talk to who had had dealings with the supernatural before the bridge collapsed?
I would say out of the people we interviewed, what did we have? Maybe out of the 11 we interviewed, 6 or 7 of them talked about at least having UFO sightings, if not Mothman encounters or direct missing time. Harriet talked about missing time from her UFO activity as well.
And can you relate that story? Was it just went to bed and woke up and didn't know what happened, or was she traveling? And
Jackie's got a big smile on her face. I'll let her answer that.
She was a child and playing in the woods, because it's all wooded area down on North Charleston. And she said that her mom, when she came home, was extremely worried about her because she had been looking for her. And Harriet said, I know I was just outside playing for like 20 minutes or so, something, very short time. And she didn't understand why her mom was so upset. And it had been hours that had passed. And then later on, she up the road, there's a Silkwood Lane is where Tommy lived, and Andy and Tommy had the vision of the Twin Towers. And then a little bit further up Silkwood Lane, Harriet saw a UFO, a cigar-shaped UFO, which I think is really interesting because the church where we did the ghost box session I was talking to you about earlier, Charles Manson burnt down the school in that area, and that's probably why it was the creepiest one we'd ever done before in our life. If you line it up on a map from north to south, you get the church location, the grassy area where Charles Manson burned the school down, and then you get the tool shed where Andy and Tommy built the shrine to Mothman because they thought he was a superhero because they were 8-year-old boys. And then the next X on the map is the spot where Harriet saw the UFO sighting. It's a perfect straight line. And we have been doing presentations for a couple years now.
Mm-hmm.
And not until we did our last one Saturday that I actually redid some of the slides for a shorter presentation. And it's like, I put the X's where they belonged, and it's like, they line up perfectly.
Now that's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
The young lady who had missing time, was she the one you said that suddenly or over time afterwards developed a higher IQ and a photographic memory?
Yeah, she said that at school they took a selected group of kids into a different room, and they gave them material to study, and they were supposed to come back and present the material to this group of adults that were there for whatever reason she was unclear of. And so she went into the room, she did all of her study, and she came back, and she's telling them exactly what she read. And the one woman grabbed a man's arm that was beside her and said, "My God, she's got total recall." And she's had it ever since. And she's both her and Andy are gifted with psychic, abilities, and she's a psychic intuitive. She can diagnose illness. I guess it's called medical intuitive. So she's that as well. And she's diagnosed Bill a couple times.
Was she fairly accurate?
Oh my goodness. The first time she met us, we were doing a Zoom meeting, and it was Jackie and me. We had another friend with us as well. And then Andy and Harriet. And this is the way we met these guys. And Harriet just started visiting with us. And she said, I think there's something wrong with you, which, I mean, Jackie knows there's something wrong with me. She's married to me.
I wasn't going to touch that one. So
yeah, she said, there's something going on with you. And I said, well, I have had back trouble for years. And she said, no, it's not that. She said, I'm getting something like diverticulitis. Now, I had never been diagnosed with, I'd never had diverticulitis. I was misdiagnosed with it a couple of years before that. But within a few days after her talking to us, I was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, and I had some type of gastrointestinal issues going on that could have very easily been seen as being like diverticulitis. So that was the first aha moment that we had. But then she's had other times that she's talked to me about my health and some of my back trouble. And I had a very severe back traumatic injury last January, and she was able to kind of talk to us about that. But she is just amazing. She's done a ghost box session with us. Jackie was talking about the one that we did on Bird Mountain before, which is right in that church parking lot. We did another one like a year after that. And this time it was the three of us, Jackie and me and our friend in the car with us, and then Andy's son and Harriet online with us. And Jackie was doing like the receiving end where you have the noise canceling headphones with the ghost box on, and then you've got your eyes blacked out so that you're deprived of sensory input.
Method. Yeah.
We were asking questions, and Harriet was making comments. And at one point, Jackie threw her everything off, and she's like, "Why are you guys shaking the car? What's going on?" We're like, "We're not shaking the car." And Harriet said, "They're fighting to come through you." So there were all kinds of spiritual energy, different voices that were trying to come through Jackie. And not only she, but the other lady who was in the car with us too, both felt the car rocking, and it wasn't rocking.
No.
Oh my, that's
violently.
Amazing.
It happened twice. The first time it just was like some movement. The second time when it happened, it felt like someone had the front bumper, like the corner of the front bumper and the corner of the back bumper from different sides, and just were violently shaking the vehicle to the point that I threw everything off, and I'm like, done, because it was completely silent. There was nothing going on. And that scared me. It's like, what is going on?
Was that at the school?
That was up the mountain.
Up the mountain. Okay.
Up the mountain from the church. Yeah.
And you were wanting that doobie, wasn't you?
Yeah.
Afterwards, yeah.
Go ahead, tell them the story, because I don't think we talked about that when it was on the air. Yeah.
Well, Andy said that he was talking about the street that they grew up on, and he said that if you go all the way to the north end, you can sit up there and see all of Charleston. And he said that we need to go up there, sit up there with him and smoke a big doobie. So I'm waiting for that. I'm going to contact him about that because that's the plan.
I want to hear more about this young lady or this lady who knew the spirits were actually fighting to get their point to you.
Well, there's another aspect to this that we didn't share with you yet. So the year before that, when we did the ghost box session, all three of us in the vehicle had like an electrical sensation around what we'd call the third eye up through the crown chakra. And it was a feeling of, it wasn't painful. It was kind of pleasant, but a feeling of being lifted up out of your head in like an electrical type of way. I don't know how else to really describe it.
Okay.
That happened, and we noticed it pretty significantly the first time. The second time was off the charts. I mean, you really felt like you were being pulled up. And I told Harriet that while Jackie was under, and she said, "Don't let them take you. Don't let them take you." Well, then I began having chest pains, and I'm a very healthy person.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of cardiovascular exercise. I'm in good shape, and I was having chest pains, and I never have chest pains. And then she started saying that she was getting the sense that somebody had died of a heart attack close by, and they were trying to come through Jackie also, and to have her give voice to their thoughts. Okay. So that was going on as well too. But one of the things that I've not heard Harriet speak to a lot, but Andy, when he talks about her, and she has identified that this is accurate. She's got the 2 scallop marks on the back of her neck, like Dana Scully had in the X-Files. And when she talked to her mom about her missing time and UFO incident, her mom said, "Oh, honey, you've always had that." And Harriet's like, "No, I haven't. This is something that's come as a result of some of the encounters I've had." And Andy is pretty sure that the writers of the X-Files based the character of Dana Scully on Harriet.
This sounds like a lady I'm going to have to get hold of, obviously.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
Pretty darn special. She is so psychic. It's unreal. As a matter of fact, Andy, his Buddhist, his Buddhist, what monk is it?
His mentor. His Buddhist mentor.
Passed away. And Harriet was at home, hadn't spoken to Andy for several years. And she turned around in her living room, standing this Buddhist guy. And she said, "Who are you and what are you doing in my living room?" And he basically let her know that she needed to contact Andy and let him know. So she called Andy and she said, "Colvin, have you talked to so-and-so lately?" And he said, "No." And she said, "He was just here. He passed away." So that kind of stuff happens to her still to this day. And she tries to live a normal life. She tries to stay out of the limelight, but she still has it all.
Wow. Maybe I can get you to get me in touch with her. I would love to get her on the show here. She sounds like an incredible person.
She's amazing. We think the world of her. Now, Jackie has had instances like this as well. And Harriet believes that Jackie is also profoundly psychic.
Okay. What happened to what have you had there? Just what you described, or have you had other instances up on Point Pleasant? Jackie?
Of psychic things or just things?
Well, and the paranormal seems to be crazy up there even now.
Yeah. So we've done spirit box sessions that have given so much. No other spirit box has talked to me as much as it has talked to me until you start talking about Mothman, whether it's Chicago Mothman or the Point Pleasant Mothman. And we literally started with a spirit box session at Robinson Woods near Chicago by O'Hare Airport, because there were so many sightings of Chicago Mothman at O'Hare. And that question, there was a question asked there: what does 13 and 31 have to do with this? Because we were working with Sam Moranto, he's the Illinois State Director of MUFON, on the Chicago stuff and the Point Pleasant stuff, trying to find correlations between them. And so the answer came back: a place to go visit. So me and my friend started looking in West Virginia for a 13 and 31 intersection. And we found one right outside of Parkersburg in Vienna. And we went there and did a ghost box session. And that one was unbelievable, the stuff we got out of there. But for just real quick off of my memory, I can remember it talked about a park, keys, box, bones, Native American, and there was other things too. And we were trying to figure it out on our way back. And Parkersburg's a little bit of a haul from Point Pleasant. So we were talking about it on the way back, and we got back to Point Pleasant and we got Bill, and we were going to go to Charleston, I believe. No, it was nighttime. I don't know what we were going to do. But anyway, so it came to us, though, that we should be doing a ghost box session at the Point in Point Pleasant at 2 Indy Way, because Chief Cornstalk has like 5 bones buried there, and he's got his obelisk, memorial obelisk of him there. So we did one there. And I don't actually remember everything that came from that, but we got some validation about some things, but we didn't get any validation about Mothman and if Mothman was still around. And then from there is when we went down to Mound, West Virginia, which is North Charleston, and did a ghost box session there. And that's when things really went off the charts. But so in the TNT area, I was videoing birds and didn't realize until I went home, back to the hotel, and was downloading the videos for the day, and I'm watching them, and there's like this plasma ball that comes down and joins another bright light, and then it just disappears. What happened was Bill was on the phone. Me and my friend are videoing these birds, and all of a sudden Bill gets off the phone, and there's like this spectrum. You know how sun comes through this clouds, and you'll see a spectrum coming down to Earth? We were seeing that come up behind the trees. And we didn't put it together until I saw this plasma thing, and then that spectrum appeared. So we have all kinds of pictures of the spectrum, but we didn't realize that there was that weird thing going on. So we had that going on. Last time we went out to Point Pleasant to the Mothman Festival, we took a friend along. We had to drive through the TNT area, because you have to drive through the TNT area. And it was uneventful. He did not want to get out of the car. He didn't want to see the igloos or anything. So the next morning, I get up to get ready to head down to the Mothman Festival again. And I'm getting out of the shower, cleaning myself up, and my ear's bleeding. My right ear is bleeding. And it's like, I told Bill, my ear is bleeding. He's like, yeah, I heard you. And I said, no, my ear is bleeding. There's literally a chapter in the Mothman Prophecies, The Night of the Bleeding Ear. And then Bill has conjunctivitis in one eye. So it's like, so if there's weird stuff that's going to happen, if you want to have it happen, have me along. Because I just always have this just like unexplained stuff. There was like this weird thing with a coin that was on our bed that couldn't have been on our bed, because we had do not disturb on our door. No one was in our room. We slept in our bed 2 nights. We're getting ready to leave, and there's this coin sitting on our bed, a weird coin too. It wasn't just like a quarter. It was like a presidential $1 that I've never even known existed, but they made them at one time. And this is on the bed. And it's like, so we asked Harriet what that was about. And she told me what to do to, see if it was paranormal or if it was just Mothman related. And it was Mothman related. So, I don't know, just like tons of stuff. We had a voice coming out of the floor, and we've had all kinds of right side leg injuries since we moved into our new house. And Bill's texting Harriet to see if she can figure out what's going on. And I said, a white farmhouse. I have an image of a white farmhouse in my mind's eye. And at the same time I'm saying that, Harriet says, I see a farmhouse attached to the land. Something happened there. And that's what I'm telling Bill as she's, texting him. So just like, there's just all kinds of weird stuff that happens. I can contact dead people. If I try to contact dead people, they don't come. But if I do a really deep meditation, almost to the point like a trance, then I telepathically can communicate. And that's really interesting. I really enjoy that. And I wish I could settle down enough to do it more often.
Well, folks, you got, and I totally forgot till you brought it up, but you got the cornstalk curse there. You've got that haunted former amusement park nearby. You've got, well, the haunted Blennerhassett Hotel down in Parkersburg. That's where I was speaking last year.
Mhm.
Mothman, UFOs, Men in Black, ghosts, with the things you've been dealing with. Why is that area like that? Is it all based on the curse, or is this just something else?
I think there are a lot of different factors that kind of coalesce there. I think part of it could be the cornstalk curse, which interestingly enough was debunked in a Small Town Monsters video. And even Denny Bellamy, who is the Mason County Director of Tourism,
Mhm.
he brought forth a play during his interview with us that basically was the curse verbatim. So he had felt that it was manufactured. So the legend was kind of debunked
Okay.
until local author George Dudding, who has published dozens and dozens of books on the paranormal, we've gotten to know him the last few years, did some research into the cornstalk curse, and he actually published a book that we picked up in September at the last festival. And in that book, there's all kinds of proof that the people in the community were aware of this potential curse for really a couple of centuries going back. So
Okay.
that's really kind of interesting. But I think the wherever two rivers come together is seen in Native American lore as a power source, that something about the water flowing and coming together, mingling right there with the Ohio and the Kanawha rivers, that kind of generates some power there also. And the entire valley in that area from Charleston down to Point Pleasant, there are mounds that many of which have been leveled in recent years, but they're burial mounds. So basically that whole area is considered a valley of the dead. So you've got all kinds of Native Americans buried along the banks of the rivers. You've got the cornstalk legend. You've got 3 communal graves in the TNT area, which is where the TNT was manufactured for the World War II effort, and the first place in the Point Pleasant area where Mothman was sighted
Right.
back in the 60s. So you've got that too. So there are any one of a number of different energy sources or potential things that could happen there. And West Virginia, being as dark as it is, would be a perfect place for spectral and UFO type things to hide.
But with all that tragedy, the people are still standing strong.
Yeah.
They are. And you asked me earlier, Dan, what some of the positive things we found in our study were. And I pulled up a list of them. I'll read that to you. There is appreciation for life, community, entrepreneurialism, family, gratitude, memorial, optimism, patience, perseverance, personal development, perspective taking, positive relations, preparedness, and spiritual development. So there were a number of different things that kind of came out of the bridge disaster that really helped people to grow beyond just the pain.
That's, what more could you ask? All right, folks, I wish we could sit here and talk another hour, but I'm going to have to let you go. The book is Bridging the Tragedy, Silver Linings in the Mysterious Ohio River Valley. And Bill, Jackie, thank you for being on and being such great guests. We've been all over the map tonight.
Well, thank you, Dan. This has been fun.
All
It
right.
has been fun.
Hang on for just a second. I'll talk to you as soon as we get done with the ending credits. All right.
Sure.
Have a good night. Thank you. All right, my friends, you heard it. And I think, if anything, you should feel a little uplifted that in spite of the tragedy, people are still doing well and continuing on. And I think we can all do that. I do want to hit real quick the joining up with the UNX Network, as I've talked to you about before. All you got to do is go on unxnetwork.com, drop down a little bit, fill out the paperwork, and it's just, I think, your email address, basically. And for all that work, you get access to the blogs. There are X-Blog coming through. They kind of keep you up to date on things, plus a monthly newsletter. And you also get the magazine once a month delivered by email. It's a e-copy. You can order a paper copy if you like. I usually do. But this has got some of the best authors going. And as you can tell, these go all over. Time travel, ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, demonology. I've written them articles for these on vampires, the haunted battleship North Carolina. I've written articles on, oh gosh, all kinds of different things, conspiracies. Whatever you're into, it's there. And whatever you're into, we've got it here on the UNX network. Join up, join us, and enjoy yourself. Because like I said earlier, whatever you are into, we've got it. All right. Also do want to hit real quick that on May 11th, I will be speaking at the Appalachian Paranormal Arts and Culture Center in Beckley, West Virginia at the Raleigh Playhouse. It's a great time. Going to have several good speakers. Come on in and join. And as far as the UNX goes, the XCon. I'll be speaking there on October 11th in Springfield, Missouri. We did it last year. Same hotel. While we're all sitting around having a good time, talking about different things, we're watching shadow people circle the room. We didn't even know the hotel was haunted. Now, this year, I may be leading a ghost tour of the hotel, more like a public ghost hunt. So if you get the chance, we need to get you here. It is October 11th to the 13th. Get on to unxnetwork.com and you can get more information there. And I'm going to pull on out because it's getting to be that time. So I want you folks to stay good, be cool, stay warm if you need to. We're depending on the weather. It is springtime. And most of all, stay spooked. Good night.